Okay, and we are back. A little late today, but I did want to come on and discuss a couple of things regarding resistance. We talk a lot on this channel about how things change. We talk a lot about how we start transitioning, into our soul unrealities. We talk a lot about how our dream world opens up. We talk a lot about how we start to notice more of the subtle energetic things that we didn't notice before because we didn't have the consciousness before, and that's usually the link there. We think about them because all of a sudden we have an awareness of them. So, we have to sort of achieve consciousness before we can achieve higher consciousness. So a lot of what we do in the beginning is just trying to achieve consciousness, just noticing the things we didn't notice. Now, are we aligning our life at that point to the highest of the high? Well, no, because we don't know how to do that yet. We don't even know what that means. Herein lies the rub that comes later of why don't we know what that means? What happens because we don't know what that means? What happens when we keep trying to go forward in a process that we're kind of resisting at the same time? And sometimes we don't know how we are. So I want to delve a little bit into the resistance we have today. And when we don't even if we know we have it, we kind of don't want to admit it to ourselves that we have it. A lot of times with me, I'll have dreams where I kind of tell myself that, you got this going on and you don't want to see it, You have all this stuff you don't want to shift. All these things could change and you don't want any of this stuff to change. You're maybe okay with this stuff changing, but you don't want this stuff to change, which causes a lot of resistance because it's going to happen anyway. We can't once the ball starts rolling, we can't really stop the ball from rolling, even though we want to believe that we can stop the ball from rolling. We want to believe that we can all of a sudden wake up and we can kind of pause our process, either because we feel like we're in a pretty good place with it. We've gone from awareness to some higher awareness. We have gotten maybe more precognitive abilities. We're able to maybe read our field. To me, I think in the beginning that's kind of more wishy-washy though, because we kind of get a lot of competing signals. How much are we really reading our field? How much are we interpreting from our human what's the word I want to use here? How much am I trying to interpret from somewhere else? Am I really reading my field? I'm not really sure. We have a lot of that in the beginning. That's when we go through a lot of different, we might watch a lot of videos on telepathy or precognition or, dreams, and can we really see the future in our dreams? We start kind of exploring all that stuff because our antennas are a little off. Because we haven't really gotten to a point where we 100% understand that we don't have to try to do it. It's just a very natural process that we have within us to just get this stuff done. But we don't really feel that in the beginning. We don't really see that in the beginning. So we get a lot of mixed messaging, right? We get a lot of, is this how, I remember I talked to a person once, and I completely remember, when I was, because sometimes we don't remember when we were in these spaces till we get to these spaces, and then I'm like, oh, I remember that. I remember when things would happen and they seemed so random, but I didn't know, was I causing that, or was that just a coincidence? We start going through that kind of stuff. Deja vu starts getting really, really strong. Am I noticing that? Am I not noticing that? What's 100% going on here? And we get more curious about it, because we don't know. What really is going on here? I remember I worked with a lady who said, she'd be thinking of a movie and she turned on the TV and this very random, not a movie that was on TV all the time, would have been on TV. And she didn't know if she was causing that or was she just reading it in her field that it was on. And usually it's a little bit of both. It's on because it's in our field. So in a way we cause it to come on because it's in our field. So all of a sudden it comes on because we're saying it's on. And we're also picking up on the fact that it's there. So by picking up on the fact that it's there, it's now kind of materialized for us because we kind of knew that's where it was. So as we go through a lot of these processes, we start to kind of enjoy enjoy the fun, but sometimes the chaos in the beginning is very chaotic because you do kind of feel like you're losing your mind in a sense. You don't really know what's real. You don't really know which way you're going to go. We talk a lot about the fourth dimensional realities and the third dimensional realities, and how basically third dimensional is just your life you created from your human consciousness. A lot of people try to take third dimensional and make it a physical reality, but it really isn't related to that. It's just the level of consciousness you created the reality from. So when I say third dimensional on here, I just mean it was created from our human consciousness. It doesn't mean it's more real than a fifth dimensional reality or eighth dimensional reality. It's just they're created from a different consciousness. And third dimensional realities are created from a human consciousness. Fourth dimensional realities are kind of the purgatory of both. You can look at third dimensional as hell, fifth dimensional as the beginning of heaven realities in a sense, and then fourth dimensional is kind of purgatory, where we're kind of in the middle, and we really don't know what that is. And then we get into, even when we get into the heaven realities, when we go 5D and above, everyone has a different idea of what that is, but not from your human perspective. Everyone has a different idea of what is a heaven reality for you. What is a heavenly reality for anybody? And when we start to try to merge realities, that can come into confusion and question for a lot of people because we don't have the same idea of what heaven is. For some person, hiking around Colorado the rest of their life would be their most heavenly reality they can experience, and that's what they want to do, whereas that does not sound heavenly at all to me, to go hike around, for the rest of my life. That is not something that I would think is a heavenly reality. But they're still not based in human realities, and we can still try to bleed those over, what we're supposed to look like. That's a big one that starts to come in because our bodies go through so much change. We gain weight, we lose weight, because when you start embodying in a lot of your soul light, you get bigger, your body gets bigger. People will talk about, birthing different realities because in a way, some people will talk very visceral kind of about that kind of stuff. When you go into that, that segment of bringing a new reality online, that your body kind of swells up like you're pregnant, and though I haven't experienced things quite in that fashion, I definitely notice my body changes over time. I'll have 1 year where I swell up a lot, I'm bigger, and then a year where I'm a lot thinner. Because in the beginning, we embody a lot of light, so we get bigger, and then we start working through the density of programming we have, and then we get smaller because we start dropping all the density. So even if you feel bigger, you might get on a scale and still not weigh as much as you think you should weigh because you just have no really idea because you feel like you're taking up so much more space energetically, but your body doesn't have the density anymore. So sometimes we feel very big when we're not really that big. But we can cycle through a lot of that stuff. We can go through periods where we're shedding a lot of our hair, and then other periods where it seems like it's thickening up again, and then it's shedding again. Feel like we age up quite a bit. There's a lot of physical stuff that goes on, and a lot of times the root of our resistance starts to come when we get to a certain point where we pulled out of that confusing phase. We still will stay in the fourth dimensional realities for a long time. We can usually be there, and I know I've said this before, years before. We think we're out of fourth dimensional realities, and we have never left them. We will think we are so cutting edge and in like a 10th dimensional reality, and we're still setting in fourth dimensional realities because we don't know what even a fifth dimensional reality looks like. So we wouldn't even know it if it hit us in the face, in a sense, because we're still trying to align a human reality. You will try to do that no matter for a long time into your process until you start to understand they don't work together. Now, you can't take third dimensional energy and create an eighth dimensional reality, and you can't look at what your soul wants to create and jam it into a human reality. I see a lot of people that'll try to take a higher consciousness. I don't really want to use the word product because it's really not what it is, but you take a higher consciousness idea, what's another word I can throw in here? Kind of an epiphany, something you want to talk about, something you might be able to help someone else talk through. And because we still live in a money society, you have to charge money for services, whether it's, now personally, I only charge for stuff I do one-on-one with people. I don't, and courses I do, I don't charge for any of the other stuff I do, the YouTube stuff I do, the Instagram, I don't do any of the Patreon, I don't do any of that kind of stuff. Now, there are different ways to support the stuff I do, but I don't advertise any of that stuff, and I don't go out and, because people who want to do that find that and they do that. You don't have to talk about that. Because that's really not why you're doing it. But there is a part of when you're doing, and plus it's not really valued. A lot of the work, when you start doing a lot of this work, you see it's not really valued by, people don't value their soul. You do a lot with that in the beginning. That's because we didn't value it either. So a lot of that's kind of karmic retribution that kind of comes back to bite us because we didn't value it either. So, why are we shocked when we kind of get that hit back at us? Because I can remember doing the exact same thing. I was like, that's ridiculous to charge that much for that. And then now I look back and go, well, that's why it can come back on us, because we didn't value that. We didn't think it was worth that. And until we start to understand, we won't be supported until we support other people. It's a very reciprocal kind of reality. And those are the kind of things that we don't see how that kind of comes back to some people want to call it the art of reciprocation, the law of reciprocation, where, until you support other people, no one's going to support you. Until you maybe hire a professional to help you with something, no one's going to look at you as a professional to help them with something. It kind of, you start to see how if you don't value it, no one's going to value you. And that's how that works. Until you support other people, no one's going to support you. Until you really go on and start looking at, what can I do? It's kind of like, I remember I used to think, wow, in the neighborhood I lived in years ago, no one ever helps anybody. Everyone no one knows who anybody is. When I was in a condo, so everyone's like on top of each other, but you didn't really know anybody. And, no one would really assist anybody. And I remember thinking, well, I don't really do that either. Like, I don't go out and help anyone do their driveway when it snows. I'm not helping anybody out. So it was kind of an epiphany in that moment when you look at, well, if I'm not doing it, why would anybody else do it? So I remember the first time I went out and started doing that, cleaning off people's driveways, that, just because I could, and I was already out there cleaning off mine, so I can clean off 3 or 4 while I'm out here. I can do that. Going to other people who I knew might have had, were older, and it might have been, they might not have felt like doing it, and I could do it quicker than they could do it. So, and then you kind of see everyone else kind of starting to do that too. Because we kind of facilitate the change. But when we're kind of still in our human existence, we just want to bitch about, what's not changing. Because we don't really see the connection yet. And when you start to see the connections, it's kind of mind-blowing that it's like, oh, well, yeah, well, you'll see it a lot when you look at how judgment works, right? And I'll always say we can't be judged. If we don't hold judgment ourselves, no one can judge us. Right? So that's kind of how these realities get set up, where if we're not doing anything to help anyone else out, why are we surprised when the whole reality is built with nobody helping anybody out? Because we didn't construct the reality that way. We're setting in the reality, and the linchpin in that reality is we're not doing anything. Because we're always the linchpin on our reality, because we're the one that built the damn thing. So there's no one else that we're going to look at and go, yeah, well, it's their fault. It's someone else's fault this isn't working. We built the reality, whether we built it our own micro reality or we linked it to the collective that built the macro reality. We still are part of how it got built. But you see this a lot when you see people kind of judging different other realities, and they don't want to judge, but they do. Right? It's like, I don't want to judge that, but we're going to judge that. And not only am I going to judge this reality here, I'm going to go back 300 years and judge those realities too. Because, I'm going to assess it to today's standards and judge that one. And it's kind of the same thing. When we talk about taking a human reality, a soul aligned reality, and judging it by a human standard, we do the same thing all the time. You see it so much, especially today, and where we try to go back into realities that technically don't even exist in the reality we're in. They're long, long past realities. and millions of vibrations later, because all the things in those realities eventually faded themselves out because the collectives either died off or the people didn't believe in that collective anymore and they pulled out of that collective, so the collective fell. And that's what happens with higher consciousness. It happens the same way. It just can take a lot longer because we did not have the support of actually being able to ascend our bodies to a certain frequency until the 2012 gateway came in. And that's when all of a sudden we were able to go farther. We were kind of in, a lot of people call it the period of enlightenment. You'll see a lot of people call it different things. We were also the age of intuition, you've seen it called a lot of different things. A lot of books we will label it something else, but there was definitely a transition that started taking place. We were able to hit higher notes, we were able to, and then we realized we were able to embody it in, where we didn't have to wait 100 years for collectives to, fizzle out in a sense. But we can pull out of these collectives now. If we don't support the collectives, then they die off. These collectives aren't there anymore. But you see so many times people will go back hundreds of years and judge a collective on today's standards, which it's a total different frequency. It's a total different reality. It's a total different vibration. And we also took part in those realities. Different aspects of us are still taking part in those realities. I'm going to label it as a past reality here because that's how our human's going to look at it, because but everything is simultaneously always taking place at the same time. So there really isn't a past. It's just different frequencies. So you see people doing that a lot today, where they want to take today's standards and put it on something else. And that's what we will continuously do. And we do that today. And a lot of people will do that because they don't know the difference. They don't know. They don't want to realize they're doing it. They don't realize the judgment in that, because they always lead off with, I don't want to judge that, but we're going to judge it. Judgment will be the last thing we will purge, in a sense, from ourselves, because we carry so much of it. We judge ourselves so harsh. And then to kind of distract ourselves from how much we judge ourselves, we judge everybody else. So there's so much judgment just in general ingrained in our body that we can't help ourselves when we're still living from that human consciousness to judge everybody else. And if I don't have anything in front of me to judge, I'm going to go back. Let me go back so many hundreds of years. I'm going to judge that just because I don't know what else to do with this one. I've judged this one to death. I'm going to go judge something else, because we hold so much within ourselves. And because we participated in every reality, we still hold the judgment of those realities because we were in them. There are aspects of us that play in them still. They still will. The cadence of the reality is still in our DNA until we purge that from our body. The cadence of all of these realities are still there. People all of a sudden start getting interested in something. They'll start talking about, air quote, a past life experience. It is really not a past life experience. It's happening concurrently to what's going on now. It's just a different dimensional reality. But something similar is occurring here. But we get so wrapped up on everything else. We get wrapped up on the story behind the reality that we don't really start to understand until much later in our process, that it's just energetically a signature's common thread is activating in this reality. It's not about that reality. It's about this one. Something's bleeding over. That's why I'm even remembering that one, or that's why I have an interest in that time period all of a sudden. I have an interest in looking at my Akashic records, which we have so many Akashic records. I always say, when people say they're going to get them read, I'm like, which ones are you going to get read? Because you have Galactic Akash, you have Lemurian Akash, you have Human Akash, you have as many Akashas as you want to have. No one's going to be able to read all of them for you. They're only going to be able to read what they have gained access to on their own as far as their consciousness level. But when we remember stuff we haven't remembered in a long time, we're clearing our own Akash. We don't technically need to go to someone to get our Akash cleared, but in the beginning it opens us up to the idea of that. It opens us up to the idea of, why are all these things bleeding over? If we go back to the start and we talked about the confusion phase, when we're not even sure, what came first. Is it the chicken or the egg here? Like, did I remember that? Or am I just, imagining that? Or did that just happen? Did I dream about that and then that just happened? So we try to look for something tangible to kind of anchor it into. And a lot of times people try to do that with having their Akash read, having past life reading, but which aren't really in the past. But because it's a similar thread now, The key is to find the similar thread now. That's more or less why you're seeing it. That's more or less why it's important. That's why every time you would go and get a reading, you're going to get a different one, because in the next stage you're in, that one's more important than the other one was. Now the energetic line, that energetic signature is this other one. It's not that one anymore. But it's the energy behind the reality and how it got set up that matters more than the reality itself. But we kind of get all bogged down on that. We kind of take ourselves out of the present moment because we have so much resistance in really aligning our present moment. You know, we don't want to deal with the body stuff we have to go through. We resist that because when we start losing control of our body and what our body's doing, as far as not being able to do the stuff we used to be able to do, as far as just not having the energy to do a lot of that stuff, because our body goes through so much trying to just hold more of our soul, you know, and more of our soul aspects, our galactic aspects, you know, and reading the field. And when you start operating in that consciousness level and you embody in that consciousness level, your human existence, in a sense, is gone. You know, you get to a certain point where it is gone, or you know it is going, and the more it is gone and going, it becomes kind of a uncertain phase. We get a lot of uncertainty. Our ego, our human aspect comes back in and goes, are we really sure we want to do this? I mean, look at how much everything's had to change already, and it could get a lot more, and we don't really have anything to hold on to anymore. Everything we had to hold on to is long gone. And you just have to really have a lot of faith in the process. That's why you get so many people sharing their process of, you know, how they have gone through ascension. And then when I see so many people kind of getting to a certain place and they don't want to go any farther, you know, they don't want to continue to go, because if they continue to go, then the more they continue to go down the thing, they got to change something. Something's got to change. We can't expect our soul aligned reality to look just like our human realities with just a few perks. Like, oh, in my soul aligned reality, I'm going to be rich. In my soul aligned reality, I'm going to have all these things. I'll be famous. I'll be whatever it is. Whatever, we're going to take that human reality and try to stuff it into what we think is a soul-aligned reality, when there are a lot of people living human lives that have those things that would not say they were happy. But if we don't have them, we assume that's the key, right? We assume, well, if I don't have that and I get that, then that'll make me happy. So there's a lot of kind of trial and error when we start shifting our realities and trying to really strengthen our kind of faith in the reality. And anytime I get a visitor when I'm sleeping, you know, I dream of someone, usually it's me. Usually it's just a different aspect of me. It's always a different aspect of me saying, you know, you're really resisting this. You know, you don't want this part to happen. You know, you don't want to have to stop working out as much, or you don't have to stop doing these things. You keep pushing the body. And I know I'm very guilty of that one myself, you know, of still trying to push my body like it's more of a human body, and not understanding that it now operates just completely differently. You know, it's just, you just don't have the energy to do all the human stuff because your body's doing all this other stuff. And so the day-to-day stuff, some days you do have the energy to do all that stuff. My thing is, even days I don't have the energy to do all that stuff, a lot of times I'll push myself to get through it, because I want to keep all the realities kind of, some realities I can see, I don't want them to shift. You know, I don't want to have to, I don't want to have to not do that, or I don't want to have to not do that. So we really have to be honest with ourselves about what are we kind of resisting, and whether it's going to be the money stuff, as far as having to maybe leave a job that had supported you and now you're not sure how that's going to work, and it's probably not going to work how you think it's going to work. Where's the new money going to come in? Or if I don't continue to put out a lot of work, how's the money going to come in? We start kind of second guessing a lot of the process, not understanding is the things we're resisting are the things that have to happen to get to the next phase. So the more we do that, you know, we kind of put ourselves a little bit on stall, but you can only put yourself on, I don't even say we're on stall, we're just getting up the ladder a little slower, but at some point we can't stop the ball rolling. There are certain ones of us, you know, and people who came way before me and people that come way after, I'm, you know, done with this part and go on and do something else. that, when you're kind of in these phases, everyone's going to kind of have a different idea of kind of what ascension is for them. Or kind of, I had a friend once who said you can see what your agreement was with ascension. That's what she would say. What is my agreement? I don't have to go this far. I don't have to go this far. I can kind of stop it. Now, I've since feel like that's really not the case. I don't think you can. You can put it on pause if you get to a certain place, maybe when I'm going to just go linear years here, not so much for the time frame of it, but just for reference, because we don't really do linear year. We don't do linear years here because it doesn't matter. It's a very human thing. All that stuff is very human stuff. Birthdays, all that stuff is very human stuff. If you're in your 20s and let's say you've been really into your awakening and really into your ascension journey, really into all that stuff, and all of a sudden you feel like, oh, well, I feel like I'm supposed to get married, or maybe I want to have kids, and that stuff will kind of put things on hold for a while because you have human things you need to go do that you also agreed that you would do. So you will see people kind of maybe getting into because they raised kids for 18 years and they go back into their process later on. So all of us have a different roadmap on how we're going to go through it, but everyone will go through it. It's just how quickly we go through it. That's more to me the agreement we had than, we can just put it on pause and stop it because, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with taking a little bit of enlightenment and plugging it into my human life and just feeling a little more plugged in. But that only goes for so long because the more plugged in you get, the thing about being plugged in, the thing people don't, is you want to continue to be more plugged in. Because you realize you have blind spots of stuff you can't see. And when you're starting to see stuff, you don't like that. Our human ego comes back in a little bit and goes, well, wait a minute. I can see maybe 2 weeks out. I want to be able to see 2 years out. I want to be able to understand my whole what was my whole human template? What is my whole soul template? What is all this stuff I want to be doing? What should I be doing? What should I not be doing? So we start kind of pushing forward because we don't like being able to see this much and that much. And we start out with being able to really see very little. And then all of a sudden we see more and more and more and more. And the more we see, the more we want to see. And all of a sudden we're like, well, I'm not happy with just seeing that. I want to see more. What we don't get is that it's kind of our soul kind of tricking our ego, to keep going. Yeah, keep going down that road, because we're always going to be pursuit of the next. We're going to go deeper in to see how much more can I see. When you see people that are talk about different things they can do, as far as what they can see and how much they can see, you just want to keep going. And sometimes maybe it is because you're in the pursuit of that one thing. That one carrot that was dangled, that whether you want, your soul partner, or you want the twin flame experience, or you want, you want to clear your abundance karma, or whatever it is, usually it's a human tie in there for a while because it tricks us to keep going. Because we want to go deeper in, because it does feel good. It feels so good when we are anchored in and we are in touch with ourselves. And then all of a sudden we don't feel like we're in touch anymore. We want to go deeper in. But by doing that, we start unanchoring more stuff to go. Now, there's some stuff we're not going to care about. There's some stuff I say when you're kind of done with it, you're done with it. Like a lot of people will have to stop eating meat. At some point that does go. But people who are big meat eaters, they don't want to hear that. But I'll always say, if you still want it, then your body still needs it for a process it's doing. By the time you got to give that one up, you don't care. Because you don't really have that emotional attachment to meat. But you do maybe have an emotional attachment to, your mother or your wife or, your girlfriend or your child. And those things, when they might have to start shifting, or the balance of the relationships have to start shifting because they're not aligned, that's when it gets a lot more challenging for our human, because that's the stuff we don't want to mess with. Or when all of a sudden we want to sleep more and we don't have the energy we used to have, and we're starting to be more energetic beings than physical beings. And we don't want to put on weight, or we don't want to, I had a friend that used to tell a joke that when you go to a doctor, they could say, give you all these side effects to something that could be horrifying, and you'd kind of tune out until he would get to the part where he's like, and you might put on weight, and then you're like, oh, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Did you just say I gained weight? What? Well, what was that one? Because we're so fixated on how we look. We're so fixated on, what we look like. I mean, I know I still get dressed up and makeup on when I do sessions or when I do videos or whatever I'm doing, or I do a class. I still do that. I find my motivation changes on why I do that. I do that because it just makes me feel like I'm going to work. It kind of gets me into a routine to go do what I want to do for the day. So you will find your motivations for certain things change, but there are some days where I just don't do anything, because I just don't feel a purpose in it, or I just don't want to anymore. So really looking at, and I am going to open up the chat for a minute, but really starting to hone in on what we're resisting. And for a lot of people, it's the bigger things or the body stuff. Not really listening to our body and what our body's trying to say. I know I'm going to be trying to do that more, because I did get the message in my dream state last night that I'm resisting a certain part of this process, and I can feel where I am. Trying to keep my physical body at a certain space, that's getting harder and harder, and hold down the energetic field, and stay in a reality with other people who live in the same house right now, because I'm in that process too. And it's just a lot my field's trying to do. So when your field's trying to do it, your physical body, someday you're going to find you have a lot of physical energy, and other days you have more, you're just doing more upgrading, and the physical body's not there, but you feel maybe more tapped in. Your energy body's there, but your physical body's not there. And then that can be frustrating, because you want to get out and do all this stuff, but you want to maybe get all this work done, but your physical body's not there. So, all right, let me open it up and see if I have anything. I think that's probably oh, okay, let me see. Okay. I do have a comment that I never agreed to be human or do human things. Well, we all did to a point. Any human reality we take part in, we did. If you're in a human body, you agree to be in a human body. There's a lot of, even if you're in a very galactic phase, and I meet a lot of people who are very much in their galactic phase, and the more in their galactic phase they tend to kind of not care for human in any way. They don't really have a lot of really close friends, and if they do have friends, they don't really care that much about them. I had one guy say once, and he's like, yeah, they're like pets to me. I really don't care. I switch them out all the time. They don't have there's no attachment or no cord there, because your galactic aspects don't have that. So a lot of times when we're trying to do a lot of this stuff, especially severing cords of attachment, we can tap into our galactic aspects and embody those in, because they don't have that. Anyone who is really into their galactic phase is very detached from human anything. And even when we're in our galactic phases, we find we don't have the compassion that our soul aspects have. So we have to kind of merge all that together, because if you don't merge all that together, you can't just be in all your galactic aspects all the time. Eventually you have to go to your soul aspects, because the galactic aspects are going to assist you in certain processes. You get the galactic intelligence with that process. You don't have the emotional heavy stuff. I know I went through my galactic aspects, or I was still in them, but when I started going in them, I'd already done a lot of the deep soul work. So they were refreshing to me, because you don't have, you really are. You're more direct. You don't want to pull up with a lot of bullshit. You want people to get to the point, just get to what you want. Let's not beat around the bush here, but you do feel like you kind of lose. And, well, you don't really lose the compassion. It's just you're working on a different aspect. Eventually you'll merge it all together. Eventually you'll bring it all back in balance, where you can have that non-judgment in a sense. And you can feel the compassion, but you don't get enveloped in the story. So you can feel compassion for the person going through it, because it's still an important story to them, but you don't get caught up in the story, because it's just a story. It's just the story that their universe has created for them to get them to a certain point for their ascension process. Eventually the story won't matter to them either. But if we get all caught up in the story, we kind of lose we kind of lose that. We get all corded into it, and we kind of lose that detachment of it that the galactic aspects will bring. They're much more refreshing. But you do kind of feel like you're kind of I talked on a video the other day about a void space. You kind of feel like you're missing that void space. You kind of feel like you're starting to miss that, that part of that where you do feel connected. Because you start to feel really disconnected. And the galactic aspects can do that. But they can also help you sever ties, sever realities that you're having a more challenging time with, because we have so much story around it, that the reality can't exist without us. Or if I change how I interact in the reality, I can't be part of the reality anymore. And sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not true. Our human's going to try to make us believe that's true to keep us from doing those things. It also is supposed to keep us from doing those things. So galactic aspects are much different, and when you're in your galactic aspects, you will feel that detachment. You will see the cords in the human stuff. You will see that. But believe me, if you're in a human body, you did agree to human experience on some level. But if you're really into your galactic aspects and you're working on that, exploring those, you're gonna feel that disconnect. And a lot of people, that brings up a lot of guilt sometimes with people, where they kind of wish they didn't feel that way. I know a lot of the galactic people who are really in their galactic aspects, when you talk to them, that will always kind of be there for them. There's a guilt there because they feel like they should care more. I shouldn't look at my friends as pets. I should look at them as more than that. But that's why it's really important. We have to do both parts. We can't just do galactic and not do soul. We can't do soul and not do the galactic aspects, because they're kind of two sides to the same coin. The galactics don't have that love for humanity that the soul aspects have. But the galactic intelligence, the way to sever your ties, your really galactic power, your real true power set can come through the galactic aspects. So a lot of times that's what's needed to align a lot of these realities, and cutting the ties to a lot of these realities allows us a chance to align them, and we can still participate in them. If we feel like it's aligned, we just don't have the attachment to the reality anymore. We lose the attachment. Just like when we cry and we're mourning something, we're crying out what's not love for that reality. We're crying out all our attachment to that reality. And we're not to get us back to just the purity of that reality and how we feel about that person or felt about that person. It's not about, we're grieving our attachment. We're not really grieving the thing. It's the attachment we had to the thing, which wasn't pure. It's distorted because we don't like maybe how the thing ended, and we wanted it to end a different way. We didn't like that thing's gone now, or that person's gone now. So we're grieving out all that attachment, and we're grieving out all that what wasn't. A lot of people will say it's what's not love. That's what we're grieving. That's what we're kind of getting out of our body, so we can come back to that peaceful place and come back to that purity place. But all that stuff has to go, because that is not, it is, like I said, it is the attachment to it. It's not uncompromising, uncompromised is probably not what I want to say, but it's not pure. It's tainted with the human stuff. It's very tainted with the human stuff. So, okay, I think that is good for today. So, I guess that's it, and I'll see everyone next time. Bye.